what's going on? Today we're going to talk about adjustable rate mortgages. Some of you were asking what was index, and if I could explain a little bit better how the changes happen in adjustable rate mortgages. All right. So the first thing I want to address is very simple, which is what is an adjustable rate mortgage, right? Traditionally, everybody knows fixed rate, right? And fixed rate is very simple. Your interest rate does not change for the lifetime of the loan. So if you borrowed at 5%, it's 5% for the whole 30 years of your loan, right? Assuming you have a 30-year loan. If it's an adjustable rate mortgage, the first thing we have to look at is the fact that if it says adjustable, then it means variable, right? And what is something that's variable? Something that's volatile, something that is not consistent. So for the whole 30 years of your loan, what could happen to your interest rate? Well, it could go up, it could come down, it could stay the same. We never know, right? So everything is measured based on what we call an index. Now, what is an index? Index is just, again, an indicator of something of measure. So if we look at a benchmark, right? That's what I like to talk about as a benchmark. So from this point to this point, what happened, right? If the index is based on the stock market, you guys can see it daily. Stock market goes up, stock market comes down. That's an index of what people are bidding on a particular company, how much it's going to be worth. So how much it's producing, how much people are bidding, because the more people there are, eventually what they do is they can even split the stock and so on. But that's a different story. Sticking here to mortgages, we're talking about an index or an indicator or a benchmark of what the current market is doing. The most common benchmark is the United States Treasury bill. We call that the index for most mortgages. It could be based on the LIBOR rate, the London index. It could be based on so many things. Again, the most common one is the 1-year Treasury bill or even the 10-year Treasury bill. So here's what I've done. I went and I pulled the 1-year Treasury bill chart, and the chart shows us what the index or what the indicator of what the market's been doing over the years for that particular commodity, or what's the bond, right? So what's been doing over the years. Now, in this particular scenario I'm going to present to you guys, I pulled the record of 30 years from 1960 to 1990. And why am I using this record? Well, because I need to show you 30 years how things could change, right? And between 1960 and 1990, a lot of things happened to index. Right now, they've been really low. And if I show you the last few years, the dramatic effect that I'm going to show in a second about the adjustable rate mortgages might not be the same. So I really want you to see what happened back in the 70s and 80s for you to have an idea of how people were affected by this type of mortgage. But also, if you understand the way they were affected, you also understand how a lot of people benefit from the low rates as we are right now, and how many people can switch to an adjustable rate mortgage or from an adjustable rate mortgage, right? So let's figure this out. This is the index that I obtained. And index, I told you, this column right here, this column right here represents index. Our index starts at 0, then it's 2, 4. So we're jumping in 2s to make it easier. If you guys notice, our mortgage started when the index, I'll explain this better. Our mortgage started when the index was right here. Let's say this is 3 just to make it simple. So index was 3, all right? Now, at the bottom, the numbers we have at the bottom, these are the years. I just want to be clear. I made this in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 11 years, just so I don't have to zoom too much into the graph, but make it easier enough for you guys to understand how it happens. All right. So this is a 30-year span, but I knocked it down to yearly. The concept is exactly the same. Okay, it's just for the presentation purposes. So at year 0, index 0, year 0, right? Where were we? We started this mortgage when the index was at 3. All right? And then 11 years later, index is right there. That's that point right there, which is like 7. So that's index. That's what the market is doing. The stock market is doing. All right? So let's look at the stock market over these 30 years, but in my example, but in my example, I put 11 years. But look at what the stock market did. Index, market, right? So index is market, what market is doing, what they're performing. In this case, I'm sorry, the 1 year treasury bill was performing at 3 when we started. At 3 when we started, then it went up and up and up and down and up and down and up and down, because that's the way it goes, right? And then on year 7, look where it was. 16s, 17s, and so on. Again, this has nothing to do with your mortgage yet. This has nothing to do with your interest rate yet. This is what the market is performing. This is how it looks. A graph looks like almost like I like to compare also to an EKG. When you see an EKG, your heartbeat is erratic. It goes up and down, right? So this is what happens to the market. If we were to zoom in to the minute, then whatever you guys are seeing right now here on the screen will be the same thing to the minute. All right, so it changes by the minute. This is the compound, right? So let's look at this. There are a couple elements to a mortgage that's adjustable. And the first element we already covered, index. What is index again? An indicator or a benchmark of how something is performing. So in this case, it's the 1 year treasury bill. How did it perform over these years? Okay? So index, indicator of how it is performing. Now, the other thing that's important to know is called margin. Okay? The word margin is just to explain to you. Let me go right here. That is index. The next word is margin. So margin. And usually I like to say that margin is what the bank likes to get paid. So bank gets paid above index. All right? So this margin is the term for whatever the bank gets paid above index. So index 3 is where we started our loan, what the market was doing for the 1 year treasury bill. If the margin, what the bank wants to get paid, let's say, for example, it doesn't have to be this. Let's say it equals 2%. What the bank is saying is that they want 2% on top of what the index is. So if the index was 3, right? Let's say the index was 3 plus 2% margin. This equals your interest rate, and therefore your interest rate is 5% interest. Okay? Again, this number right here is margin. This number right here is index. Okay? And again, it's very important you understand this concept, because when your fixed rate is 5% for the lifetime of the loan, if you guys notice, let's say this bar right here, I'll explain better what the bar is, right? But let's say for this example that I'm going to say right now, this bar is your interest. It's flat for the lifetime of the loan. This is a fixed rate interest for this particular example. Okay? If you guys notice, the bank deals with the market going up and down. The bank suffers with the market going up and down. Or if market goes all the way down, the bank benefits from that difference. Right? Now, what they do with an adjustable rate mortgage is they shift that risk or benefit to you. So if the market is lower, you pay low. If the market is higher, you'll pay higher. All right? So they don't get hit The margin, this right here, the 2% margin, is constant. Is constant for the lifetime of the loan. So the 2% margin does not change. What changes is the index. So as I like to explain in class is this is the margin, all right? The margin is the difference between the index and the interest rate that you get paid. So if index goes up, so does your interest. Margin that didn't change. If the index comes down, index right here, if it comes down, then your interest rate is this, but your margin is still the 2%. Nothing has changed here. This is the chunk the bank takes to get paid. So it's constant for the whole 30 years if you have a 30-year loan. All right, let's go back to this. These are the two main items that you need to know, or terms you need to know for an adjustable rate mortgage. Index, so that's market, what's performing. Margin, what the bank gets paid. And interest is what you pay when these two are combined. Okay, so let's look at what the market did 1 year later. So 1 year later, if you guys look right here, 1 year later, the market went to 4%. That's the market, the index went to 4%. And why did I mark 1 year? Why didn't I mark 6 months? Why didn't I mark 3 months? Why didn't I mark 10 years, right? Well, it's very simple. The other thing we need to know is called, I'm going to put right here. See these marks right here in green? This right here, we call it, actually, I'm sorry. Use these marks down here. This right here, between 1 year and the other, we're going to call it adjustment period. Now, in this case, in this scenario, I made the adjustment periods to be every year. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and so on. So every year it adjusts. Remember, your rate is not fixed for 30 years. Your rate is adjustable every year, or every 6 months, or every 3 months, or every 10 months, or whatever it's determined to be your adjustment period. So the adjustment period says, hey, during that period of time, I'm safe. Interest does not change. So what happened was, in this scenario, even though if you guys see in blue, the market went up and down, even though it went up and down, in the first year, you were locked at 3%. Put a different color here just for you guys. All right, so in the first year, you were locked at 3%. But at the end of the first year, there's this increase right here. This increase right here from the 3 to 4. So it went up 1% on the index. You guys got it? And then for the following year, the adjustment period is stayed at 4. And 1 year later, as you guys can see, 1 year later, it went up 1%. So 1 year later again, here, going back. All right, 1 year later again, it went up 1%. And let's keep on looking at this. 1 year later. So let's lock this rate, because for the next year, lock this rate. And here we were at 5%, right? This was at 5% index, right? But look at what happened during that 1 year, and we're talking about the year 2 going on to year 3. During that 1 year, index jumped. Index jumped all the way to 8. I'm gonna write 8% index. All right? What is the gap between 5 and 8? What just happened? What's the gap between 5 and 8? The gap is 3% increase. It increased, it jumped. So for the whole year, the second year of your loan, right? So for the whole second going on to third year of your loan, you were paying at 5%. Nothing changed during that year. But at the end of that year, going on to from the third to the fourth year, it jumped to 8%. So you have a 3% increase on your mortgage. All right? Let's not talk about what happened after that. Look at that. Right? Just keeps on going up. So let's not talk about it yet. So here we jumped during year 3. We jumped from 5 to 8. All right? So the next element we have to talk about is called a cap. Cap. And the cap, I like to compare it to having a bottle of something, and there's a cap on it. Okay. Why do you want to know about the bottle? Because we can fill that bottle until it reaches the top. If we keep on filling the bottle, what happens? It goes overboard. So there's a cap. There's a max that you can fill it, right? Can you drink the water and then fill it up again? Sure. But you can only drink the 16 ounces, let's say, at a time. I hope you guys get this, because that's what cap is. The cap equals, let's say, 2%. And this 2% that I'm giving you as an example, it could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 10. This 2% is on any single adjustment. Okay? So the cap is the max that they can charge you on any single adjustment. So in this case, it was a 2% max. Now, let's go look at the index real quick. From within your first year, you're at 3% index plus margin. You guys remember margin? That's what the bank wants to get paid, that chunk that they take after. So your interest rate, your effective interest rate, right, is the index 3 plus 2 margin. You're at 5. So your interest rate for this loan is 5%. Now, if you guys notice, from year 1 to year 2, there was a jump from 3 to 4. That means your new interest rate is 4 plus margin equals 6. The gap between them was 1%. If the cap, which is the maximum that they can increase on a single adjustment, if the cap is 2%, then we still have enough room. Can they charge you the 1% increase? Yes, they can. Next year, guess what? Again, it only went up 1%. So the next adjustment period, 1%. They empty the bottle, filled it again, 1%. The following year, from the year 3 to year 4, we had a jump of 3. Right? Can they charge you this 3% extra? And the answer now is no, because there's a 2%. Oh, sorry. Because there's a 2% gap. So the max that we can charge is this 2% increase. It is capped right here. 2% increase. That means that the bank is losing 1%. I'll talk about that 1% in a second. But the max they can charge is 2% increase. So now the new index for this purpose is 7%. Let's go back here. I told you that your interest is index plus margin, right? So in this scenario, on year 3, 3, right? The bank looks at the index and reevaluates your loan. Okay? So, year 3, index was 5, right? Margin is constant, so 2. That means your interest rate was 7% interest. Cool. But when they adjusted to year 4, so 3 going on to year 4, when they adjusted, when they checked what the current market was doing, they saw 8 index. You still have your 2 margin, right? And that would mean that your new interest rate would be 10%. Your new interest rate would be 10%, right? So what would be your increase? The difference between these, your increase from here to there, is 3% extra. Now, as I was explaining, there's a cap. What is the cap for? The cap is to avoid what's called payment shock. As an example, let's say you were paying $1,500 per month. And now we went to 10%. Your new payment is $2,000 per month. Now, I'm not telling you these are the exact figures. This is just to give you an example, give you an idea of what really happens. So $1,500 a month, you're comfortable for the whole year. You were comfortable, but now it went up to $2,000. Guess what? This is for the next year. So for the following year, it's always going to be $2,000. That extra $500 a month could hurt somebody, and that's called payment shock. So that's why there's a cap, as we were talking about. That's why there's a cap. That's why we cannot think of index to being at 8. The max that we could increase was 2. So index, we're going to consider it to be at 7. And that means your interest rate is 9. And that means your payment is not $2,000. Your payment is $1,800. Again, these are not exact figures. It's just for the presentation purpose. And you can see that an increase of $300, it still hurts, but it's not as bad as an increase of $500. So the idea is to protect the public from these changes. The same token, when market comes down, the bank is protected. All right, so I'm going to explain that in a second. Let me just recap this real quick. Now, I'm always going to go back to the beginning. How do we calculate interest? Well, index, the market, the ticker, the indicator, the benchmark, plus the margin, which is what the bank wants to get paid above that index, right? In our scenario, I said margin for the lifetime of the loan is 2%. So every time they check the index during the adjustment period, every time they check the index during the adjustment period, if the index changed, they add 2%. So in this case, we started off 3% index, 2% margin. Your initial interest rate for your mortgage was 5%. Then I told you that we analyzed in year 3, in the adjustment in year 3, index went to 5. So year 2 went to 4, year 3 went to 5. And we're okay because that increase, we can handle that change, right? So we're at 7% interest versus the initial 5% interest. But on year 4, there was a big jump, and that jump was 3%. From your interest to the new interest was 3%. So there's something called a cap. And I just wrote right here, 2% cap. What is the cap? Cap is the max that they can charge you, on any single adjustment. All right? This is just to prevent that overflow, like I told you, the bottle of water, right? Prevent that overflow, the spill, which to you is called a payment shock, right? So because there's a 2% cap, and I'm just recapping everything, 2% cap, can they charge you an increase of 3% on your interest? No. They can only charge you 9%. Okay, so that's your new interest rate, 9% interest. Instead of increasing from $1,500 a month to $2,000 a month, you're going to go from $1,500 to $1,800, which is still difficult, but a little bit more manageable, a little bit more affordable. All right? So, hope you guys got this so far. Now, what happens to that difference, right? What happens to that difference? Because in this scenario, right, 10 is what they were supposed to charge, minus the 9 that they actually charged. We have a 1% loss to the bank. They are losing because the cost of the money is higher than what they're charging you. All right? So there's 3 things that could happen. I'm not going to write this down here, but 3 things could happen. Right here. If you guys look, this gap right here, this gap right here, that 1% is that loss that they have, right? They cannot charge you for it immediately. But remember, they can increase your interest on every adjustment. They can increase how much can they increase? They can increase 2%. So if you guys look what happened the following year. In the following year, it went down to back to 5%. All right? So it was at 7 until here. It was at 7 and then it dropped. So now this is the gap. It dropped. So what do you expect? You expect them to drop to 5 plus your margin 7 interest. So you went again from 9 to 7. The answer is no, because they have one of 3 options. The bank can use that 1% loss right here, this 1% loss, they can bring it to here. So now that 1% loss, even though market went down, right, they're going to add plus 1% recover. All right, so we're going to call it recover because that's what they're doing. They're recovering what they were losing over there. Right? I hope that helps, right? Recovering. So they're now at 6%. I hope you guys understood that. So the bank traditionally doesn't like to lose. So they save for the next adjustment. In this case, it went down and they were able to recover their 1% immediately. All right? So for you, what does that mean? It means you could have gone down to, where were we? Right here. You could have gone down back to the $1,500 that you were paying originally. But because your new interest rate has to include that 1% loss, instead of going down to $1,500, you might go down to $1,700, let's say. You guys got it? Because it's the 5 new index, plus that 1% loss that they're trying to recover, plus 2% margin, and this tells you that your new interest rate is 8%. So it doesn't drop back to the 7. They want to recover their money. So I hope you guys are getting this, and I'm trying to be going as slow as I can and recapping as much as I can because I know it can get complicated, right? So now you probably think, okay, that drop is great, but I saw something on your screen, Bruno. I saw something on the screen that there's something that was like a spike, right? So let's look at the spike real quick. Right there. So over the years, look at that. Year 5, what happened? Between year 4 and year 5, you're like, whew, I'm safe. Because in year 5, between year 4 and year 5, just kept on going ridiculously high. But it adjusted lower. So you're safe, right? Look at this. Year 6 and 7, 8 and 9. This is crazy, right? It reached the peak right here during these years. It reached the peak that represented 17%. 17% index. So guys, if you go back here, if you understood what I've been saying so far, at 17% index, right? Oh, sorry. 70% index plus the 2 margin, your new interest rate here on year 7 or 8, whatever it is, I'll show you in a second. In year 7 or 8, your new interest rate would be 19. Oh, what did I do? 19%. That will be your new interest. You started off with 5%. A few years later, 19%. And you're probably like, oh, Bruno, that's not real. It is. This is what we got. If you guys can search this up. Search the 1-year treasury. This is a snapshot of the 1-year treasury from 1960 to 1990. This is real. This happened. People were paying 19, 20, even 21% back in the late 70s, early 80s. All right? So this could happen. All right? And now Bruno, wait a minute. You're asking. Wait a minute. So you're telling me if I get into an adjustable rate mortgage, I can go from 5 to 19? No. What I'm telling you is, if you started at a high interest rate, you could get into a higher, even higher interest rate. What I'm telling you is also that there's something called payment shock. And if there's a cap on a single adjustment, guess what? There's also a limit on how much they can charge you. You guys remember that bar I have right here? That red bar? And this red bar is settled right there on the 9%. Now, I'm not saying 9% is the limit. This is for example, for presentation purposes. But what I want you to know is that this bar right here, this right here, is called lifetime cap, or as we know, ceiling. What is a ceiling? Ceiling is something we cannot go up beyond. All right? So if you guys notice, going back here, very sensitive. If you guys notice going back here, there were several years and several adjustments that were beyond, right? All these adjustments were beyond, right there, the ceiling. Right there. This was all beyond the ceiling. The good thing is that the lender can never charge you more than this. This is a lifetime cap. The cap is on every single adjustment. We have it down here, right there. The cap is on every single adjustment. So every year in this scenario, it could be every 6 months or more, but every year that we adjust, every year that we adjust, and every year that we adjust, they can increase that 2%. If market goes down, they recover something. We went over this right there, okay? But the lifetime cap, the ceiling, they can never breach. It doesn't matter what happens in the next adjustments. They can never breach the ceiling. If it goes up, it doesn't matter. They can never charge you or mark increases here. You got it? Ceiling is the lifetime cap. It can never go above that, right? So Again, recapping. We have index, which is the market performance of something, right? Which is the benchmark of something. In this case is the 1-year US Treasury bills. Okay. We have the margin, which is what the bank wants to get paid above this index, right? So whatever point you see the red dots here are adjustment periods. So when can we expect a change? When can we expect a change of your interest rate? Well, it's based on the adjustment periods. And during the adjustment period, that little gap right there, but during the adjustment period, your interest rate does not change. It's fixed during the adjustment period. It could change at the end of the adjustment period. So that's what happened here, right? All right. So again, things to remember. The cap is the max that they can charge you on any single adjustment. And the lifetime cap, the ceiling, is the max they can charge you. Doesn't matter what happens to the national rates. It does not matter what happens to national rates. All right? So that's the lifetime of the loan cap. Right? So I hope this helps. Now, I did talk about the bank could recover their money in one of 3 ways, right? First way was market goes down, the bank gets his or her money back, or its money back, its money back by charging you above whatever that drop was, right? So you don't get to benefit the full drop, but you still benefit. Yeah, the second way is, well, you know what? We don't want to recover. Don't worry about it. We'll never charge you. How many times is that going to happen? I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's an option. And the third option, which is the most common, it's called negative amortization. Negative amortization is where they take this loss, whatever they lost, whatever they could not charge you, right? Let's say that loss represents $20,000. Again, this is an example. Let's say it's a $20,000 loss, right? They're going to add to the principal. So, negative amortization and what is amortization? Mort means death. Amortization is to kill it off slowly, so to kill the loan slowly over time. So negative amortization would be you borrowed $100,000 and instead of the value dropping, right, it increases. Because over time you make payments, it's supposed to drop. But because you have a loss, a $20,000 loss, then your principal balance increased. You now owe $120,000. So this is the negative amortization. Negative amortization, because amortization is to kill off slowly over time, so it goes down. Negative amortization is it comes up. I'll call it resurrecting the debt. All right? So every time you pay less than what's needed to amortize, less than what's needed to pay down the debt increases. Just so you guys know, there's traditionally, there's a limit on how much it can increase. So if the limit was 15% of the original borrowed amount, then in this case, it would be $15,000. If the limit was 20%, then this would be correct, $120,000. All right, so there are limits to these things. All right, so guys, this is how adjustable rate mortgages work. Index, margin brings your interest. Cap on any single adjustment. Adjustment is the anniversary of your terms. So if it's a 6-month term, then it's 6 months fixed and then adjusts to the new rate, right? And it keeps on going. Lifetime cap is the max they can charge you for the lifetime of it. And negative amortization, if you're not paying enough to even bring down interest, then you owe principal and interest added to your loan. That's pretty much what we have. There's other things like convertibility, assumability. There's the teaser rate, which is the initial rate that we saw, like 3%, 3 plus the 2, 5%. But that's pretty much it. I mean, that I've covered it all. If you guys still have questions, remember, you can email me at instructor@newdirection.school. You can always call the office as well. If I'm around, I'll definitely answer that. If not, anybody that's here should be able to answer a few questions or pass along the information for me. I'll create a new video like this. If you're part of the school, if you belong to the school, you have our WhatsApp private group. Put the questions there if you want. If you're part of our Facebook group, private Facebook group, you can put the questions there as well. Reach out to me, whatever way you guys prefer. I will create as many videos as I can regarding this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.